Hello and welcome to Lois and Morgana Davidson Art. It's Morgana here, and in today's video I'll be sharing with you my process for painting these majestic grey-crowned cranes in flight against a beautiful bright summer sky. This is the reference photograph that I used for this particular painting, which I found on the website www.pixabay.com, which hosts many beautiful free-use photographs. I adjusted the position of the bird slightly on the paper to give the composition that I wanted before sketching them out, and then protecting the outlines with masking fluid before wetting the paper all over with clean water to prepare for painting in our beautiful sky. The colours that I used are on screen. I will also pop a full list of everything that I'm using today in the video description below, as per usual. I'm using a De La Rowney Aquafine 2-inch flat wash brush to begin, just to get good coverage of water nice and quickly over this large size paper, before switching to a small mop brush, this is a size 10, to dot in a little bit of raw sienna to get a nice golden sort of sunshine glow into the sky to begin with, before moving on to using a larger mop brush, this is a size 20, to sweep lots of lovely, bright, summery cerulean blue across the paper. Now I'm using the brush to do lots of different sort of types and shapes of brush strokes, some sort of larger sweeping strokes to cover these bigger areas, but I'm also just dabbing it quite carefully around the little areas of raw sienna that I've just put on, because I'm trying to create a little bit of interest and texture in the sky, but without getting bogged down by having to use lots of different colours and introducing lots of different paints that might potentially work against one another. So sticking with cerulean blue, lovely and simple, and alternating between areas of just lovely flat sweeping colour, and then these little dabs with the mop brush, which is creating these sweet soft cloud effects, which I'm really enjoying, leaving plenty of pale patches for the whiteness of the paper to peep through the paint and really give us those simple clouds ever so effectively. You can see that the softness of this synthetic squirrel hair mop brush just gives us those lovely sort of softened, diffused edges, which you can then enhance if you like by using something absorbent to dab out some more paint. I'm using a bit of balled up tissue. You can use a sponge or kitchen towel or a cloth or anything that will pull the paint clearly out from the paper. You can also use a similar technique to dab any excess paint from your masking fluid before setting it aside and leaving it to dry. And now this is how that wash looks now that it's dry. You saw just how quickly I was able to put that together, and I'm actually really pleased with how it's turned out. Just except for this area here, the colour is a little strong for me, so I've decided to demonstrate how to soften and lift a little bit of colour out. I'm beginning using my water spray and some clean tissue to just lift some of the colour here, but you can also use clean water and a brush as well. So I'm going to do that here. I'm just using my mop brush again, the size 10 one, and just gently using clean water to start lifting a little bit of colour off the paper, and then dabbing with a piece of clean tissue as soon as I've sort of covered the area that I want. And if you use a nice soft brush like this mop brush, which is an imitation synthetic squirrel hair, you get these nice soft diffused cloud edges which blend quite nicely with the colour. Of course, if you want sort of harder lines, if you're doing something that needs that, then sort of quite a stiff, strong synthetic brush will be your friend here. The stronger or harder the brush, you will get stronger sort of lifted out lines. But here you can see that I've finished doing my lifting out. I'm pleased with the result, and once everything is fully dry, you're ready to remove the masking fluid. So here we are, we see these outlines have been kept nice and white by the masking fluid. Masking fluid does of course lift your pencil line, so you can see that I have gone back in with my pencil and just quickly redrawn a tiny bit of detail, just the body and the head of one of the birds, just to give me a bit more guidance when I'm painting. And I'm using Payne's Grey for these birds. I'm going to be using that quite a lot. And I'm starting with this lovely long outstretched wing here on the left. So I'm putting in the colour quite lightly to begin with, and just covering that large wing area and making sure that it's a nice sort of coverage of water, which then I can use to paint wet and get some interesting diffusions really quite simply. Now I'm coming back in with a smaller brush. This is a miniature detail brush from Pro Art, and I'm introducing some richer paint into the areas that need to be a little bit darker. So still using Payne's Grey, and I'm just very carefully using the small brush to follow along these lovely long extended feathers on the edge of the bird's wing here that just need to be a bit darker than the rest of the underside of the wing. As you can see, with this sort of size of painting, it can be a little bit fiddly, so it does pay to invest in a decently small and fine detail brush that you can rely on to get into those awkward little details and spaces. So now I'm just bringing the darker colour a little bit further along the underside of the wing. And the fact that I painted this whole area of wing with the very pale Payne's Grey to begin with means that I can work wet and wet here to get some nice sort of transition between the dark colour and the pale colour. So you can see I'm just trying to blend that down a little bit to get that transition, and of course to try and keep the colour dark enough on the edges while softening it right back towards the body of the bird, which is more of a grey colour than a black colour. Here I'm just introducing a little bit more water just to help that process. Here I'm just encouraging a little bit of darker colour into the underside of the wing, picking out the shape of the body using a touch of negative painting here to introduce shadows around the tail area and to help create the shape of the legs against those flight feathers. As you can see, it's a really helpful thing to have a couple of fine brushes that you can absolutely rely on to create this kind of level of small detail. And I can really heartily recommend these little synthetic ones from Pro Art. They've managed to maintain their point really well despite almost daily use. Here I'm just repeating exactly the same process for the second wing. Once again, I'm using lovely rich dark Payne's grey paint to really emphasize the flight feathers on the end of the bird's wing. Once again, I'm working to introduce darker colour along the lower edge of this wing using my fine brush. I'm working wet and wet to get some lovely soft diffused edges. And one of the reasons I love using Payne's grey so much for this kind of work is that it does tend towards granulation, so you get some lovely interesting effects as well when you paint like this. Now once those beautiful wings are dry, it's time to take out your smallest and most delicate brush and add a few simple lines that's just going to bring out the face of this bird. I'm using Payne's grey here and just a couple of very fine lines just to begin emphasizing the round sort of cheek area and the beak of the bird, as well as bringing forward this crest that he's got on top of his head. Of course, you can use black or any other dark colour if you'd rather. I'm sticking with Payne's grey because it's what I have on my palette. And of course, if you don't have a fine enough brush for this kind of work, or you're not particularly confident in your small brush strokes, then using a very fine art fine liner would give you a similar effect as well. You can see there just a tiny little circle for the eye. You really don't need to worry about giving him a sort of pupil or an iris colour at this stage. You can see just how small this bird is against my hand here. I think any more messing about with the eye would just sort of blot it out and make it unrecognisable. However, I did just put a touch of Windsor red across his face and head there just to give him a little red crown, because why not? And I'm now using the same small brush to complete the detail on the bird's feet and lovely long trailing legs. And again, this is just some simple Payne's grey placed against the white. Now it's time to go ahead and repeat exactly the same process as I've just shown you on bird number 2. Here you can see I'm using the same process of these very fine lines using Payne's grey and my fine detail brush to enhance and bring forward the little face of this bird. Here I'm adjusting the colour on the bird's wing a little, just to add a deeper shadow behind the arch of the bird's neck. Again, just using some more Payne's grey. And once again I'm using a lovely bright Windsor red to add a small pop of colour on this bird's delicate crown. And that's the painting finished. Thank you everybody so much for watching along with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed painting these magnificent birds. If you did enjoy this video and would like to see more like it, then please do follow the link below this video to my Patreon page where you can sign up for even more painting videos from me. A huge thank you to those of you who've already done that. Your presence is welcomed and hugely appreciated. So that's all from me today. Thank you again for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will look forward to seeing you all again soon in the next video.